Our world keeps on changing. Increased in temperature, typhoon, earthquake, floods, and many more. Lots of unprecedented situations happen on us. How about the life forms in the polar region? Are they experiencing what we had experienced right now? The temperature in the polar region also keeps on increasing. Glacial formation keeps on melting, and the sea level is also affected with it. Organisms that live here experience the worst situation due to the change of their habitats and situations. The Arctic land experienced extreme fluctuation between summer and winter. The permanent ice and snow, which is loved by the dominant predator, the polar bear. Polar bear is a large bear native to the Arctic and nearby areas. It is closely related to the brown bear. The adult males weighing 300 to 500 kilograms, as adult females were much smaller. Its teeth are much sharper and more adapted to cutting meat. The paws are large and allow the bear to walk on ice and paddle in water. Polar bears are both terrestrial and pagophilic or ice-living organisms. It is also considered as marine mammals because of their dependence on the marine ecosystem. Polar bears may travel areas as small as 3,500 square kilometers to as large as 38,000 square kilometers in a year, while drifting ice allows them to move further. Depending on ice conditions, a bear can travel an average of 12 kilometers, 7.5 miles, per day. These movements are powered by their energy-rich diet. Polar bears move by walking and galloping and do not trot. Walking bears tilt their front paws towards each other. They can run at estimated speeds of up to 40 kilometers per hour, but typically move at around 5.5 kilometers per hour, 3.4 miles per hour. Polar bears are also capable swimmers and can swim at up to 6 kilometers per hour. One study found they can swim for an average of 3.4 days at a time and travel an average of 154.2 kilometers, 95.8 miles. They can dive for as long as 3 minutes. When swimming, the broad front paws do the paddling, while the hind legs play a role in steering and diving. Most polar bears are active year-round. Hibernation occurs only among pregnant females. Non-hibernating bears typically have a normal 24-hour cycle even during days of all darkness or all sunlight. Those cycles less than a day are more common during the former. The species is generally diurnal, being most active early in the day. Polar bears sleep close to 8 hours a day on average. They will sleep in various positions, including curled up, sitting up, lying on one side, on the back with limbs spread, or on the belly with the rump elevated. On sea ice, polar bears snooze at pressure ridges, where they dig on the sheltered side and lie down. After a snowstorm, a bear may rest under the snow for hours or days. On land, the bears may dig a resting spot on gravel or sand beaches. They will also sleep on rocky outcrops. In mountainous areas on the coast, mothers and subadults will sleep on slopes, where they can better spot another bear coming. Adult males are less at risk from other bears and can sleep nearly anywhere. Polar bears spend over 50% of their time hunting for food. A polar bear might catch only 1 or 2 out of 10 seals it hunts, depending on the time of year and other variables. Their diet mainly consists of ringed and bearded seals because they need large amounts of fat to survive. Polar bears rely heavily on sea ice for traveling, hunting, resting, mating, and, in some areas, maternal dens. But because of ongoing and potential loss of their sea ice habitat resulting from climate change, the primary threat to polar bears, Arctic-wide polar bears were listed as a threatened species in the U.S. under the Endangered Species Act in May 2008. As their sea ice habitat recedes earlier in the spring and forms later in the fall, polar bears are increasingly spending longer periods on land, where they are often attracted to areas where humans live. The survival and the protection of the polar bear habitat are urgent issues for WWF. In October 2019, the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, IUCN, Polar Bear Specialist Group released a new assessment of polar bear populations showing that the number of polar bear subpopulations experience recent declines has increased to 4, with 8 populations still being data deficient. The good news is that 5 populations are stable, while 2 have been experiencing an upward trend. Polar bears are at the top of the food chain and have an important role in the overall health of the marine environment. Over thousands of years, polar bears have also been an important part of the cultures and economies of Arctic peoples. The loss of sea ice habitat from climate change is the biggest threat to the survival of polar bears. Other concerns for polar bears include lethal response to human polar bear conflict, toxic pollution in the environment, and direct impacts from industrial development, such as disturbance of maternal dens or contact with an oil spill, and potential overhunting of some subpopulations. As Arctic sea ice thins and retreats, increasing numbers of polar bears are spending longer periods in the summer open water season along Arctic coastlines. Here, their powerful sense of smell attracts them to human communities. Garbage, stored food, dog teams, and animal carcasses bring them into greater conflict with Arctic people. As powerful predators, polar bears pose a major risk to human life and property. Throughout the polar bear's range, attacks on humans and property continue to rise. In recent years, more than 20 direct attacks on humans have been reported within the polar bear's range. WWF is supporting community initiatives to ensure they can live safely alongside the Arctic's top predator. Due to climate change, the Arctic is heating up twice as fast as anywhere else on the planet, shrinking the Arctic sea ice cover by 14% per decade. Compared to the median sea ice cover recorded between 1981 to 2010, we have lost about 770,000 square miles, an area larger than Alaska and California combined. Polar bears rely on sea ice to hunt seals, rest, breed, and store energy for the summer and autumn, when food can be scarce. Sea ice now melts earlier in the spring and forms later in the autumn in the bear's southern range, like Hudson Bay and James Bay in Canada. As the bears spend longer periods without food, their health declines. For every week earlier that the ice breaks up in Hudson Bay, bears come ashore roughly 22 pounds lighter and in poorer condition. In the U.S., polar bears have experienced significant changes to seasonal variability and availability of sea ice habitat. For example, polar bears in the southern Beaufort Sea have recently experienced about twice as many reduced ice days over continental shelf waters than polar bears in the Chukchi and Bering Seas nearby. As a result, polar bears studied in the Chukchi and Bering Seas were larger, in better condition, and had higher reproduction rates, likely since they had more access to food and did not have to fast for as long in the spring as those living in the southern Beaufort Sea. Bears must move longer distances to stay with the rapidly receding ice. In most areas, they come ashore when ice melts and rely on fat stores until the ice refreezes so they can go back out to hunt. Traditional prey species may be less accessible in a new sea ice environment, and seals that use the ice are predicted to fare poorly in the warming Arctic region. Some polar bears may suffer from malnutrition. In extreme cases, they may face starvation, especially females with cubs. Unhealthy bears can lead to lower reproduction rates and extinction in certain locations. Scientists have found the main cause of death for cubs to be either lack of food or lack of fat on nursing mothers. Climate change is also resulting in more habitat fragmentation. As Arctic ice melts, polar bears are affected by increased shipping activities and a rise in opportunities for oil and gas development that WWF is currently fighting against. In the Arctic, most industrial development has been on relatively small pieces of land. As summer sea ice retreats, a new ocean is emerging, which allows more opportunities for industrial development at sea and on larger parcels of land, which WWF is currently fighting against. At the same time, the retreating ice is resulting in more polar bears spending longer periods on land. Offshore petroleum installations and operations in the Arctic are expected to increase in number. This expansion would likely affect polar bears and their habitat in many ways, including the following: reducing the insulation of polar bear fur from spilled oil, poisoning from ingesting oil and eating contaminated prey, disturbance, destruction of habitat, impacts on entire food webs, oil spreading to areas outside of the Arctic. Increased Arctic shipping represents a risk to polar bears. As traffic by barges, oil tankers, and cargo ships in Arctic waters increases, so do the risk of oil spills and human disturbance to polar bears. We must protect and preserve our ecosystem for the future to come. Our world would be dull and less colorful if this wild organism can only be found in books and documentary film, but not in real. Please like and subscribe. Thank you for watching.